Hello, everybody, and thanks for watching. Today we are going to go to Austria, to the Wachau region, and we're being accompanied by Weingut Alzinger, and they are one of the top producers in the Wachau region. So let's invite them into the show. I see they're already tuned in, and let's start with the interview. Just 1 second. Yes, hello, good
Hello.
evening.
Good evening.
How are you doing?
Fine, all good here.
I see you have the best background, better background than I have, at least in my attic.
Yeah, real background, so real cellar, not a
Yeah,
picture.
absolutely. I was just explaining to the people. Let me put the volume up a little bit because it is a little bit low on my end. Just 1 second. That must be better. Okay, I was just explaining to the people that we're in Wachau today. And of course, we want to talk about the great region, Austrian wines, the Wachau region, Gruner Veltliner, but also, of course, the winery. So, yeah, maybe we just want to start with a quick introduction from yourself. And then, yeah, we're going to discover the region and the wines.
Okay, would be great. Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation. It's great to be here today. Perhaps a few words where we are, how we are working, or so we are a winery located in the Wachau. So the Wachau region is approximately 70-80 kilometers in the west of Vienna. Very famous region in Austria, and we have a lot of steep terraces. That's the most characterized vineyard shape what we have here. And we are producing, Gruner Veltliner and Riesling in a very specific style. And perhaps we talk in detail.
Of course,
a bit.
we're going to go in much more detail.
Yeah.
Maybe personally, because you're a family winery, so with you as one of the members of the family working in the winery, maybe a little bit of your background.
I had a bit of a classic background. So when we were very young, we saw, of course, what the parents are doing and what's going on at the winery. And the decision for the wine, if you go to a wine growing school, is pretty early. So it's on an age of 14.
Okay.
And of course, in this age, you don't know 100% if this is the right decision. And so I joined a winemaking school where you have afterwards the possibility to study.
Okay.
So to keep all
options open a little bit.
Options open. But
you were destined to, in the end, if you would want to go into the family business.
Of course. And I'm pretty happy about this decision, because I think the winemaking and wine growing is a wonderful job, because you have, in the one side, you can do a nature product. You be a lot outside in the vineyards, and on the other side, you have a lot of contacts to people. You can make people happy with the product you're doing. So it's pretty it has a lot of faces, the job, and so it's very nice.
No, your days are very different every day, and the nature is a beautiful surrounding. Plus, what you said, there's a story behind every wine that you make and every glass people drink. So in the end, you're also making an emotion, or being part of emotions of people as well.
Yeah, and I think that is also the most satisfying on this job
Yeah,
because to see people happy when they drinking a good glass of wine, when they asking you or telling you that they like the wine so much, and that's
yeah.
that's the best yeah, the best feedback you can get.
Yeah, plus, and without going too much into detail, because we're also going to taste the wine together.
Yeah.
I hope you have a bottle of the same as well. Otherwise, then I'll have to do with mine. But today
Yeah.
we are going to taste the 2019. It is Smaragd Riet Steinertal.
Yeah.
So we'll talk more about the different wines, but this is one of your single vineyards, correct? In the
Yeah, this is the wine what we are most known for. So
okay.
this the Steinertal vineyard has his high reputation because of our winery, and
Okay.
so
So it's very much linked to the winery and also to
yeah,
the success of the winery.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, talking a little bit later about that, and I already did a review earlier because Abby Bendum was so nice to send not just a Gruner Veltliner but also a Riesling,
mm-hmm.
and that's nice because normally a lot of the Rieslings I get to taste and drink are German Riesling, so it's always nice when you get something from a different country or region because it's a very expressive grape that really translates
Yeah.
very well where it's grown, and
Yeah.
that was for me very interesting always to see then one from Wachau, and that was a very great wine, but it was a little bit older as well, but
Yeah.
that shows the potential also of your wines, I think.
Yeah, that's also what we are, what the winery stands for, and what we are known for. That we always, there are two main goals. On the one side, we just have those two varieties, just Gruner Veltliner and Riesling, but we do a lot of different wines every year because most of the wines are doing single vineyard wise.
Yeah.
And we are known for a great aging potential of the wines. So if you have a good vintage, then 25, 30 years are absolutely no problem. And they are still alive and young and fresh.
Yeah, plus it goes into a very different phase after a few years. So you get one wine, but if you buy a box and you open up one fresh and then one in 5 or in 10 years, and then you keep some, you get a very different levels of Riesling or Gruner Veltliner, and that's a marvelous thing. Actually, it's like magic.
Yeah, it's funny because we get very often the question from people, when should I drink the wine best?
It's a good question.
And there is no answer, no general answer, because I always tell them you need to find your own taste, and the best is if you don't know what you like, buy a box of a wine, 6 bottles, and then try or use wine lists in restaurants and try different ages, and so you have to find that for your personal taste. Me personal, I prefer 5 years plus.
Yeah, but the nice thing also is that, like you said, you focus on 2 prime varieties, so there's a lot of focus, and there's also a lot of detail for the specific vineyards and terroirs behind those different bottlings that you do. But that also means that you don't have to go necessarily for a single vineyard wine. If you buy a box of what we would say estate wine or goods wine, then you also can do this experiment. That's
of course,
the quality on every level is good in that perspective.
And that's also one thing what's always important for me. If a winery works great, then also the entry-level wines are great. So when I taste wines from colleagues or from other wineries, I always start with the entry level, always. Because if this one is great, then all other stuff is also great.
If they want to dazzle you and they come with the best wine, so first we try the entry level. Oh, I think it's a good reasoning, and I also always say it's the signature of the winery, and if the signature is not right, then all the other wines are also not going to be up to perfection. Because yeah, you can buy or even let's say in heritage get a good vineyard or a great cru, but still that doesn't mean that yeah, even with that you can make average wines if you want to.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay, very nice. Leo, you're the third generation now, if I'm correct or not?
Yes.
Out the
Yes.
top of my head. And
Yeah.
your father is also still working in the winery? Or
Yeah,
helping you or assisting you?
he's turning 76 this year,
Okay.
but he cannot be without vineyards. So he's more the outside person,
Yeah.
more the vineyard person.
So every morning he makes a stroll in the vineyards to see what's happening.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Oh, that's nice.
he's doing a lot of details where we often don't have enough time. Yeah, and
He has his
yeah,
pension now, so he can choose whatever he wants to do with the
yeah.
time. Yeah.
And yeah, one of his favorite jobs is also we always have to rebuild parts of the stone walls from the
Yeah.
terraces, and that's pretty much his
He likes
turn.
to do that.
Yeah,
That's
of
nice.
course together with employees of us,
Yeah.
but
It's good.
he's
You see the results when you finish with the job at the end of the day. You see
yeah,
something happened, right? That's
yeah,
good.
of course.
And your wife is also working together with you in the
Yeah,
winery?
she's now since 10 years together with me here in the winery working.
So when did you start, let's say, operating on your own? You're never really on your own because, like you
Yeah,
said, it's a family
you
company.
know,
So
there was not a date when
yeah.
we switched. I'm in the winery now since 2000, so
Hmm.
it's my my 21st vintage this
Yeah.
year. And so for the production, so for the cellar, I would say I have the whole responsibility since around 10 years.
Okay.
But we still taste a lot together, also with my father, with my parents, and
Yeah.
of course with my wife. So especially after harvest, there are always a lot of glasses on the tables in the evenings.
You have to be very much in sync all the time with your product and with the in-between result, with the end result, with the
Yeah,
aging. So, like you said, after 10 years, it's always good to revisit those older vintages as well.
yeah.
Yeah, nice, nice. So maybe this is a good moment. So if people have any questions, I always try to mention in between. They can just pop them in the chat or in the question mark box, and we will try to answer them in between or at the end. But before we go into tasting the wine, which is, I will show it once more, is one of your Gruner Veltliners,
Mm-hmm.
Smaragd. We maybe talk a little bit more about Wachau,
Yeah,
because it's a very, yeah, like you said, iconic, famous area, region. And I will just let you do the talking because you're born
yeah.
there. And
Okay.
I'm not
Yeah.
born there. So.
Perhaps you have more detailed questions, but
No, no.
I will just start. Yeah, the Wachau, as I said before, is located approximately 80 kilometers in the west of Vienna, along the Danube River, on both sides of the river. And very characteristic for the region are the very steep slopes with stone wall terraces. If you look on the climatic conditions, we have two main influences. We have warmer Pannonian influence from the east, and colder continental influence from the west and from the north. These climatic zones come together in the Wachau, and so we have on the one side, especially in autumn, very big temperature differences between day and night. And it's always a little bit windy, so it's a very good situation for the wines, and also the geological part is very interesting because we have a lot of different soil types, depending where the vineyards are located. From if you are walking from the Danube towards the hill,
Yeah.
the vineyards around the Danube are alluvial soils where you have sand and underneath gravel. And the closer you come to the hills, the more primary rock you find. So on the foot of the hill, there is kind of a mixture of eroded primary rock and sand, loess, loam, depending where. And on the terraces, it's mainly pure primary rock and different types of primary rock. And this is one of the reasons why it makes that much sense to do single vineyard wines, because in very often you have between two single vineyards, you have perhaps a few hundred meters, and the resulting wines are tasting completely different. And that's also what's so interesting for us, because that's a bit of our main goal to try to reflect these different conditions, these different vineyard conditions as good as possible in the wines. And that's also the thing what the most work goes into to find out the details which are important to do this reflection.
And are you doing well, it is 2022 now, so technology is different than it was 50 years ago when your father was very active. Are you using technology into the field and to try to get a better understanding of what's under the soil, or is that still very much old school methodology?
There are two things. I think we need to go back a bit in the history to answer this question, because it's quite interesting that the vineyards, the names of the vineyards, are found a few hundred years back. And also
so like Steinertal is well, if you go back in history, you will find it in 100 years ago, you'll find it in the books.
And also very interesting is that we have a map of the vineyards, which is also a few hundred years old. And that's the very interesting thing is people in this time have no technique what we have what we have now.
They only had their eyes and their memory of the vintages and what happened.
And the wines every year, and the borders of these different single vineyards, there is not a lot changed since this time, and it's nobody knows how they were able to do that. But the borders between the single vineyards are completely on the right. No, not really. In some small things, of course, but basically it's the same like this oldest map what we have.
So in that perspective, a lot of things stayed the same.
And nowadays, of course, there is a lot of research done on the different
because
soils.
the climate changes as well, maybe a lot or not.
Of course, there is climate change. We see that, but to get an idea what's underneath or what's in the soil, that has not really anything to do with climate change.
No.
It's more about to understand why this wine tastes like this and the other wine tastes in a completely different direction.
No, I was thinking maybe the combination of the picking moments because of the climate in combination with the soil.
Of course.
Let's say bring them together. It's as the French always say, terroir. It's the combination of all the aspects. But like you said, in the soil, nothing changes more or less. And you make, like you said, you make two great white wines. How is the split between the Riesling and the Gruner Veltliner approximately?
If you look on the whole region, the the most important variety is Gruner Veltliner. It's close to 80%. The second most important variety is Riesling, which is 18%. But we have a relatively high Riesling ratio in the winery, so we are around 35–40% of Riesling. On the one side, because we have a lot of vineyards where this variety works better than Gruner Veltliner. And on the other side, we personally love Riesling a lot.
Yeah, it's a preference as well.
Yeah.
But without going too much into detail, because some people might really be keen on trying to find out, some others might be dazzled about it. But you said for quite some of your vineyards, Riesling works better. Can you maybe explain a little bit why that is in that case?
Because Gruner Veltliner needs more water, or a better water supply.
Yeah.
And in the very steep areas of the terraces, you find often very, very poor soils. That means you have sometimes just 30–50 centimeters of topsoil, and underneath you have
all of it.
Yeah, and underneath you have the pure rock. And so, if there is not a lot of topsoil, then you don't have a lot of water storing capacity.
Yeah.
And Gruner Veltliner cannot handle this very good, and for Riesling it's no problem. So,
and if you look at the altitude, does it also mean, or is that just specifically for your vineyards, that generally speaking, when you go higher up, you will see more Riesling there, or is that not?
In case of the Wachau, it's pretty much like this, but not because of the altitude, because more because of the soil deepness. Because if you go higher up, you normally have less topsoil.
Yeah, that was my thinking. Yeah.
If you have a high up vineyard with 2 meters of topsoil, then it's also no problem for the wine itself. Of course,
it's not the altitude that makes a difference, but the combination of the two.
No, it's of course the character changes if you go higher up, but it's the reason why Gruner Veltliner is sometimes not working is because of the wine itself. It's too poor conditions. If the conditions from the soil are okay, then you can also go higher up.
Yeah. So zooming in a little bit on the Gruner Veltliner, because obviously we can talk a lot about Riesling, but there's Riesling. In the meanwhile, there's Riesling in very different parts of the world. But Gruner Veltliner is hard to find something outside of the Wachau. So what it makes Gruner Veltliner so unique in your eyes, in your opinion?
First, perhaps the Gruner Veltliner is, of course, in a lot of regions, especially around the Danube, very important in Austria, not just in the Wachau.
Yeah.
If you look outside, you find not a lot, of course.
No.
The variety went, I think it went so popular because it's a wine which with a lot of faces. So you can do out of it a fruity, fresh and fruity, easy drinking style. But you can also do on the other side a very complex, terroir-driven wine, and it's very, very nice in food pairings. So we are always joking, there are no dish where you don't find the Gruner Veltliner which will fit. And I think these two things together are the big, the big thing why it went so popular in the last 15–20 years.
And I think the last part, the second reason, I think if you compare it to Riesling, because my reasoning would be, okay, if you look at the first reason, you could also say, well, Riesling can do all of that. You can make dry, off-dry, sweet, whatever you want with Riesling, Kabinett, Spätlese. But in the food pairing, it's different. Because Riesling, of course, there are some great dishes that you can do with Riesling, but Gruner Veltliner, like you said, is more versatile in that perspective, maybe.
Of course, because you can, I don't know, you can find fitting version of it for, I don't know, Asian style, or for fish, or also for dishes which you normally drink red wine. So for a steak is also possible. If you have a bigger one, it's no problem. And and I think that's also the reason why a lot of overseas countries try to grow it. But it's
not really working.
No, it's not really working.
But why would that be? Do you have any?
Yeah, because Gruner Veltliner is very sensitive to sun influence, to high or intense sun influence. And if you go south, then you get a lot more intense of the sun. Also when it's not warmer. So if you, I don't know, if you go to New Zealand, for example, the climate, the general climate is not so different to mid-Europe, but you have a lot more intensity of sun. And that's not working with Gruner Veltliner, because it starts to and then you get phenolic components and phenolic taste in the resulting wine.
It's very interesting, because I wondered often why it is that, I mean, these days you see varieties traveling all around the world, and I even had a Nebbiolo from South Africa, and that was not bad, I can tell you. And you will not think about that. You think like, okay, Piemonte, but it was good. It fooled me at least. But with Gruner Veltliner, I never really see success stories with that.
Yeah, because when we do it here, we can just do the normal cellar process. So we do
you don't have to change
in the cellar
anything or do anything.
Yeah, and if you grow it in southern regions, then you have to do a lot of findings.
The winemaker needs to create this sort of less
wine making and not wine growing.
Not wine watching. Like you're in the cellar and you just let it do its own work, because you can trust on it. Okay. So about the wine that we are having today, let's taste it. I already poured some in the glass, so we can of course do in a few minutes. We're gonna actually taste it. For the people that are watching, just showing Riet Steinertal, so single vineyard, Gruner Veltliner 2019. What would be the before we go into the tasting itself, the process of making this one?
Perhaps a few words to the vintage first, or 2019 was a very classic vintage for us. So it was pretty much perfect conditions during the whole year. Not too early, good water supply, and not really hot summer. So really classic, how we like it. And to the winemaking, we do normally, it's all hand-picked, of course. And we do mostly not, we mostly don't harvest the single vineyards in one time. It's mainly 2 or 3 harvest cycles. Because we bring out, or we try to bring out always the optimal, the grapes with the optimal ripeness. And especially Gruner Veltliner, the grapes on one wine ripen not 100% on the same time.
Yeah, so you really have to look very careful to see, okay, this section is ready and this section is tomorrow morning.
Yeah, or, you know, it's not one day, but it's 2-3 days.
Okay, so you have some flexibility in the window.
And of course, this wine always has a bit of priority. So we
sometimes you need to shift it. I mean, you cannot be at the same time or different places. Huh? And in terms of size, what is the size of this vineyard? And is this typical?
The whole Steinertal is a very small area. It's 5 hectares in total. and we own approximately 2 hectares
Okay.
in this parcel, in this area. Yeah.
And after the picking?
Sorry?
And after the picking? I said, and after the picking, when you go into to the cellar?
Yeah, after the picking, we do the grapes get crushed, only crushed, not de-stamped. And then we do, depending on temperature and the condition of the grape, a skin contact. Yeah. Which is in the case of Gruner Veltliner not too long for us. So it's normally between 1 and maximum 5 hours.
Yeah.
And after this skin contact, they get gently pressed, and then we do settling of the juice for between 1 and 2 days.
Okay.
Then we rack into the fermentation tank or cask, depending where it fits best. Then we have fermentation. We use spontaneous yeasts, but also depending on the vintage, also cultivated yeasts. But only neutral stems, which means we just want to have a secure end fermentation, and not touching the aromas.
Yeah.
After fermentation, the wines stay approximately between 3 and 5 weeks on the full lees without sulfur. Then we do 1 racking. There is a little bit of sulfur added, and then the wines stay until 1 month before bottling on the fine lees.
Okay.
And during this lees contact time, the lees is not stirred up. It's just on the bottom of the cask, because if you stir it up, you change the character of the wine. Then you get a lot more creaminess, roundness, and we don't want.
Then you lose the pureness.
Yeah.
That you have in the
characteristics. But we do it because if you have it just underneath, then you get out more complexity.
Yeah. So a little bit is okay, but not too much, because then.
Yeah, and you get complexity without getting broad if you don't stir it up.
Yeah. And this is 2019. So you just did you release the 2021 is your latest then, or not?
Always released in autumn of the next year.
Okay. Yeah. So this one has a little bit of extra bottle aging as well. Let's go into the tasting, because then we can talk a little first about the gorgeous color, which I always really like, because it's clear, but it's also very alive.
Yeah, that's also what our wines are known for. We don't use botrytis. It's all selected out if there is botrytis. In 2019 there was not, and we try always to have a very, very focused, straightforward style of wine, and Steinertal especially is a perfect vineyard to show this, because additional to the very poor soils in these areas, it's also located at the end of 2 small valleys, which are north-south. And through these valleys, you get pretty cold air from the north of the Wachau down into the valley.
So it's pushed in there, more or less.
And you have, that's the reason why you have in these areas very high temperature differences between day and night. And in combination with these poor soils, you always get very structured minerality type of wines there.
In terms of the nose and the taste, what people can expect? I always say it's easy to say I have the white pepper, because that's what everybody says about Gruner Veltliner, but that's,
it's I don't like really much to do descriptions
No.
of wines because I always say it's so personal.
Yeah.
To everybody, but of course, typical for Gruner Veltliner is spiciness, as you said, peppery notes. You find something sometimes. Herbs is a direction what you can find often, or in the nose also, like a little bit like apple or tobacco leaves. That's very, very typical. And in case of Steinertal, you also have a very straight and stony finish, and a very long finish without being too big.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I have to say, like I said earlier, I do drink a lot of Riesling, and then of course, if you look on a world stage, Riesling is a maybe more well-known variety in terms of what people are experienced in drinking. So of course there are similarities, but with this one, you also always very clearly pick out the Gruner Veltliner, because, like you said, these spicy notes, the combination of the acidity, the minerality, but also the tanginess and the bite, that's makes it very different.
But that depends a little bit on the year. If you have a very classic year, perhaps a little bit more on the cold side, and then you have perhaps a aged Gruner Veltliner or more aged with 10 or 15 years, then it's very interesting that you see that the terroir in Steinertal is very strong, which means it's not easy to find, often not easy to find out, is it the Gruner Veltliner or is it the Riesling?
So it can trick you in time.
Yeah, if you have, of course, if you have both side by side, then it's easy. But if you just have one of the varieties, then it's often not easy if you have more aged wines.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of people are not in the opportunity or don't have the patience to give the wines the time that they deserve, because, of course, as we talked about in the beginning, it can create a very different wine. The aging effect is,
of course. Yeah, you have to say that the biggest changes are in the first 5-6 years, because in the beginning you have this more primary fruit. And this primary fruit is going a bit in the background, and after 5-6 years, this process is finished, and then the further aging is very continuous. So there are not really
minimal changes then after that.
Yeah. So if the wine is 10 years old or 15 years old, makes not really a big difference.
I think maybe that's the great thing about it. Even if you drink a 20, 30, 40-year-old ones, what stays is it's even more remarkable that it stays the same than it would change, because it's achievement for a wine to retain its original freshness and acidity, because normally that's what goes first.
And that's normally it's always like this. If you open a bottle and pour it to people blind, so they don't know what they get, and then also people who are really deep into wine, and you ask what you think, how old is this? We recently have opened a bottle of Steinertal out of the vintage 1990. And there were, I think, 5 or 6 people on the table, all very deep into wine, some sommeliers. And I asked them, what do you think? Age. And the oldest guess was, I think, 2009. So
that's still far off.
And that's on the one side interesting that the wines can keep so long, so young, which is not in the heads of a lot of people. Of course, of people who are really deep into wine, of course, but I would say normal people who drink or who like to drink sometimes a good glass often don't know that also white wines have this availability. It's more known for reds.
Yeah, but the more you get to know about wine, the more how to call it, the more you wonder how it's possible that it stays like this. Because otherwise, people take it for granted, more or less. That okay, it's like a manufactured drink, like a bad example. But let's take Coca-Cola. It will always stays there's so much conservatives and everything in there that will never change anything. But this is a natural product. There is nothing, almost nothing added to that there.
Yeah, and that's also what we like to do, because of course you get also wines which are tried to make that they taste every year the same, but that's not the idea what we have here. We want to show on the one side, of course, the vineyards, but we also want to reflect the different vintages, and the combination makes it interesting, and because otherwise it would be boring.
Of course, yeah, and of course, if you're really into the details, you will always find something. But this is just a couple of % of people that, are exposed to this amount of tasting and trying. So for the average consumer, I would say you would also want to have that effect, and you also want to be surprised sometimes in a vintage.
Of course, of course.
Yeah. And we're talking about style and talking about changes, or maybe not changes, just keeping things the same. Since you entered into the winery, are there things that you changed when it comes to the style of the winemaking or in the cellar? Because in the vineyard, I cannot expect that there would have been much changes anyway. That's
I think the good thing was that also my parents were thinking pretty much the same way. So there was not a break in the wine style when we took over. So the direction was there. I think we made in the last 10 years we kept the basic direction, but we could point out a lot of more details of the different vineyards. So there was not a big change, but
maybe in communication aspect, how you communicate about these vineyards.
A lot of tiny steps to get more and more character out of the different sites.
And in terms of availability, you do, of course, Austrians are also known for keeping a lot of the wines in their own country and drinking it, but you do also do quite some export. And Adby Bendem is a nice example of a good importer that works with you. But where do the wines go?
For us, it's always important to find partners with who think like we, who have the same long-term ideas
and the passion.
And the passion, of course. And so we have a lot of partners which we are working a very long time. And also when we get new ones, it's always very important. We check extremely intense to get an idea. Could that be a long-term partnership? So approximately 50 to 60% of the production stays in Austria, depending a bit on the year, and the other part is spreading around the world. Now I think it's 28 or 29 countries. So from the one end to the other end.
I think I don't have the statistics for Austria with me right at hand, but I think it's compared to some of your colleagues, it's quite a high percentage still, or not?
Yeah, there are in the Wachau, of course, a good part of wineries which are exporting a good percentage. But if you look on the whole producing, on the whole production, there definitely stays more in the country.
And when we talk about, you talked about giving more, let's say, focus on identity in the different vineyards and the different single vineyards, etc. So more also on the communicative aspect, I would say. What are you personally also doing in maybe trips abroad and also visits in let's say bringing across the story for Alzinger and also from Wachau and Gruner Veltliner? Are you very active in that part, or do you let the partners do the work and you're happy to?
No. Of course, you know, we're a small winery, so we are not able to.
Maybe size, because we forgot about that. But in the beginning,
we
just to
forgot
give
the
the people
size.
an idea, I didn't ask you, but.
We have 11 hectares of vines, which we work, and we buy approximately 1 hectare of grapes for the entry level wines additionally. No, but we have very good partners in the countries, but of course it's important to be also there personally, because it's always a big difference, and a lot of people want to know the person who is, or the family who is behind.
Yeah, it's even more important these days than it was in the past, I think.
Yeah, of course. And so we try. We cannot visit every partner every year, of course, because that's just doing my wife and me. Yeah. And we are splitting a bit.
You also have to do work there.
Yeah, and we also should a bit. So during the summer we don't do tastings because there is the most to do in the vineyards. Yeah. So our traveling season is
low. It's not in the summer.
No, it's winter and spring, and and so we try to be at all the markets.
So we're still a little bit lucky that you got some time today, because actually this is the period where you also travel a lot.
Yeah, but you know, after this whole this year is a bit crazy, because now 2 years was nothing possible, and now
everybody wants to see you again.
Wants to see us,
and you as well. You want to see them.
Yeah, of course, of course. So and we. It was funny, because in the beginning of this whole pandemic thing, we were happy to don't need to hop on that much planes.
You go back to basics. You go back to staying at the vineyard and the cellar and do your work.
But now we are very looking forward to can start again, because you know we often. On the one side, it's great to meet people, to talk with people, to have dinner or lunch with people, to eat together, and we use this business travels also sometimes. You know, you stay a day longer and look around, and so it's.
You also get inspiration out of that, huh?
Of course,
in the culinary aspect, or with other winemakers, regions, etc.
Yeah, that's also one of the great things of when we visit partners. There are normally also other wineries, and a lot of friendships are from these travels.
I can understand.
To other wineries. So that's really one of the nicest parts of this work, that you have so many faces. You be in the nature. You see a lot of people. You have the possibility to see
you get direct feedback.
You get feedback. Yeah, so really nice.
Also, one of the reasons why I'm always also asking is because I did some reading up, of course, before the interview, and then you read some articles, and obviously quite some interviews are with the Austrian press, but also international articles. And then I don't know which article it was, but there was one article from a few years ago where they said Alzinger is one of the better kept secrets of Austria. It's not really a secret, because if you do 28 countries, you cannot call anybody a secret. But did something change in the last years in the way you are communicating as a company, as a winery? Or maybe you personally, or?
You know, how should I start? We were a very long time like a secret winery. Um, Perhaps also because of the style of the wines. Because if you go back 20 years or 25 years,
Yeah.
the style what we produce now, or also what my parents have produced at this time, was not the trend, or was not in. Because at this time there were more heavy wines, more powerful ones, more roundness, more residual sugar. And so we were in a very small niche.
Yeah, you
But
were
there
very
were,
in the opposite of what the others were doing.
of course. But we were always sure, and I think that's also one of the important thing of winemaking, that it's the wrong job to follow trends, because
Yeah.
you're always behind. You need too much time to adopt. And so we always stayed at this idea, producing elegance, straightness, character. And also the wine world changed, and also
Yeah.
the plate of the people changed. And I think that could be one of the secrets, that we were always in this direction and got more in the focus in because of the style. We were always known for this style, and I think that's pretty much.
No, so you didn't do it on purpose, but at the end the cards are playing well in your direction, maybe.
Yeah, and also if you look on for example on ratings,
Yeah.
you know, ratings are not the most important thing,
No.
but because it's more your personal taste what is important. But of course, it's a good possibility for people to get an idea how a winery works, or if you
And to
if you
compare, because not
yeah
everybody is in the opportunity to physically compare.
yeah and also this changed a lot, because 25 years ago you just you just get good ratings for this powerful style.
Yeah.
And we also got okay ratings, but not the high, not the really high ones. And also this changed.
Because now you're going, I'm going to mention it anyway, although you say it's not making a difference, but I think you can be proud of it. But now you get up to 96 points with Parker, which is a very good achievement. But like you said, you didn't change anything.
No.
The world was changing around you, more or less.
Yeah. And that's also the reason why, because you asked me before what we have changed.
Yeah.
We just have changed small details. And I also, it's not my plan to of course we try a lot, but that is just for us. That goes not to the outside.
You have your own projects and your own thoughts that you want to try out.
But we don't want to change our style completely. It's just of course it's great if there are wineries who do another style or try a lot. But I think, and perhaps I'm a bit too old for this, because I think we have found our way. We try a lot and small things, but I don't want to change the style.
No, you feel comfortable with how it is.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing, because if it's with everything, if you try to be something or somebody, it never really works in the long term, especially not, because people will sense there's something off here.
Yeah, I think it's more important to find your identity and then keep on it.
Oh, I think you're right. So I'm happy to see. I'm very happy to see that it's rewarded, but not for the reasons that you had to do anything. It's just that now, like I said, the cards sometimes play a little bit better in your hand, and that's good. I mean, you don't have any problem with getting the attention and getting the wine sold, so that doesn't change probably. But it's just that maybe there's more demand that you cannot fulfill at the moment. But yeah, that's. Before we go wrapping up, we have a few more minutes. I have a question from the guest that we had last week. and we already touched a little bit the topic. Last week we were in Francia Corta, so that's the land of the sparkling wine, where when they make the cuvées. And the question was about the climate change. As a lot of times when I ask people to come with the question for the next guest, it's a lot of times about climate, because, well, for every winery it's a topic, obviously.
Of course.
But obviously they do cuvées, so they have different varieties. They have a lot of different vineyards and plots, so they can play around a little bit. When you talk about style, they have their signature, and they can maintain even when the climate changes. And it's difficult, but it's not so difficult for them. But his question was, how much room do you have to play with that in terms of the climate, or is it even a problem for you at the moment?
The first warm years were for us 2000 and 2003.
Okay.
And since this time, we learned a lot how we can manage, or how we can handle warmer years. Generally, perhaps, of course, the temperatures, the average temperatures are rising everywhere. But if you look on these temperatures, that's always the average of a whole year.
Yeah.
And in the moment, the highest temperature rises are in the winter, for our case here.
Okay.
So the growing period itself is not that much influenced from these rising temperatures. But of course, the extremes are getting more, and that's perhaps the bigger problem compared to temperatures, because, for example, you don't get nowadays 3-4 days light rain. You get heavy rain in a half of a day.
Like you said, a lot of extremes.
Yeah. That's what makes it a bit more difficult. In terms of temperature, we can compensate that very good with different leaf management, with canopy management. That we can manage that with different leaf management, that the grapes are not that much influenced to the sun.
So they're more protected.
Yeah. So normally we don't remove leaves on the western side, where you have the intense afternoon sun.
Yeah.
If you look on rows from the western side, you don't see grapes.
Okay.
And that's a way how you can keep acidity high, and keep the flavors as they should be. Of course, it's more difficult for Gruner Veltliner than for Riesling, because Riesling naturally has higher acidity contents than Gruner Veltliner. But so for the moment, the extremes are the bigger problem. But it's not. You cannot say in 10 years it's not possible to Gruner Veltliner.
Like you said, your first experience with those changes is already some years ago.
Yeah.
So you learn quickly from that, and then from there on you try to maintain this.
Because if you compare, for example, in these first years, it was difficult to keep freshness or to keep elegance and also fruit. There was more phenolic components, because nobody knows how to handle it. And if you want to compare, so the vintage 2018 was pretty similar to 2003. And when you taste that now, and you have done good work, then you won't find out that was a hot vintage.
Yeah, and that's then in those, 15 years time, you take what you learned from 2003,
of course,
and in 2018 you managed to change that and into your advantage to pull it back to where you need it to be.
We tried a lot. We always have kind of a vineyard where we try different things
Experimental vineyards.
Experimental things, because it's not so easy. So it's not one step what you have to change. It's because with for example with leaving more more leaves on the wines, this is influencing a lot of other things. And you have to manage the whole system, and
yeah,
so
there's more shade,
not,
which also creates other problems, and
so it's not so easy.
But it was a quick learning process as well.
Yeah, but of course, but there was also a good time period to manage that.
Well, in the end, of course, you always have one try per year, and then after that, it's until the next one. So you never know how much vintages you have in your life, but it's not like you get hundreds of attempts.
That's probably the biggest disadvantage of this
profession.
job, of this profession. Because you do lots of decisions, hundreds of decisions, small decisions during the year. And you always have, I always say 50% of these decisions are based on knowledge, and the other 50% are based on feelings. And in the end, you see if they were right or not, and you cannot say, okay, we go back 2 months. And
it's impossible to change anything.
Next year, next try.
And the 50%, it's good that Mr. Leo Alzinger Jr. is still around, because he also has his vintages on his records, which in the library obviously brings a lot of
that's
experience.
Also a really good situation if you're not the first generation. Because because of this a lot of parcels what we have. There are special conditions on every parcel, so sometimes within one vineyard you don't have the same conditions within the whole vineyard, and if you need to find out this all, then you need,
if you don't have any manual what says okay, this is how it is. It's tricky.
We have books of writings where we write down how were the conditions.
But this is all family work. I mean,
and then next time you can see, okay, I have now the same conditions like in this year. I have done this step. Was it the right decision or not? If it was good, then you can do it again. If not, then you have to find another way.
Very good. If people have more questions, we still have a little bit of time. So if you're watching, you have a question, you can put it in the chat. In the meanwhile, I was watching and monitoring. I see you have fans literally from all over the world, because Canada was coming by and US. Okay. So now we're certainly not only talking about Europe. That's a good thing. People anxiously also waiting for their wines. So I think that's a good sign. So if you have a question, you can type it in the chat. I'll try to pick it up. Before I go into the last question I have, because like I said earlier before the show, quickly I give you a heads up about next week. Next week we are going into Spain, and after I've been away from Spain a while, but now I'm going back, but also to a great white wine as well. But Godello, we have a question. Let's pick that up in a minute. Godello is the wine that we're going to talk about next week. Rafael Palacios, who is a great winemaker, and the Palacios family is also very well-known Spanish wine family. But he is a very how do you call it? He's an expert on the Godello grape. What do you have? Do you have a question for him in terms of his winery or the grape, or anything you want to ask him?
I would say I would ask a bit more general question. For me, would be interesting what he think would be the biggest challenges coming up in the next I would say 10 years for the winemaking in his winery and in Spain.
So, and this can be this question. I'll let him interpret what he wants to go with direction. But it doesn't need to be climate. It can also be, for instance, business side.
Yeah, the whole winery aspect. What he thinks
the biggest
would be
challenge.
the biggest challenge in the next years.
Very good. I'll ask him the question. And then we had a question: if you could make a red wine, what one? That's a good one for a white wine winemaker.
Yeah, we drink a lot of red wine, or a lot of, but mainly one variety. Now also a second one, but the main variety with red that we drink is Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir. So that would also be the one that you want to make, or you want to steer away from making it? You just drink it.
It would be interesting if there were the right conditions, but we don't have.
But you're not going for a Zweigelt or Blauwfrankisch. I see somebody from Burgenland, so I'm just asking here because there's other people.
You mean from the production side now?
Yeah. What you want to make?
We have in the Wachau. It's especially the soil conditions are not.
No, there is not possible.
Right. And so.
Then you opt for a different variety.
We stay on white wine, and I drink the red wines from the colleagues.
Very good.
And Cabernet Franc is a bit of a new love.
Okay.
I think very interesting variety.
Okay. So Cabernet Franc is the second option, you would say. Okay, very good. I think that's what we had in terms of questions. Greetings from Burgenland. So passing that on. Thank you very much for your time, Leo. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure for me too. Thank you.
I hope we learned to people a little bit about Wachau and about your winery, but I think it was very interesting. So I'm pretty sure they picked up some interesting facts and would like to try the wine, which I'm going to show one more time. And also thank Albi Wendum for supplying and being a partner. So
great partner of our winery since a long time.
Very good. Thanks for your time, and I'm wishing you a nice evening and my regards to the family. And I will surely keep on following up with your wines because excellent, both the Riesling and the Gruner Veltliner. So later we're going to put a review on online for the people who are watching from the Riet Steinertal, the Smaragd. I have one closing question because we didn't touch it. It's strange that I didn't ask, but for those people who don't know, Smaragd.
Smaragd.
We take 5 more minutes for this question.
Okay. We have 3 categories in the Wachau which describe the wine style. This is Steinfeder, Federspiel, and Smaragd. Steinfeder for the very fresh, fruity, light style. Then Federspiel for the more complex, bit more structured style, and Smaragd is the most structured, a bit more powerful style of wines. It's not a term of quality; it's more a term of style. To get, I think it's a very good possibility for people when you look on a wine list, for example, you don't know the producer, then it's often difficult to know what you expect when you order. And this is a very good possibility to get an idea what you will expect when you get the bottle.
Sometimes you feel like I want to have a little bit lighter, fruitier, then you start there. And if you want to have some more complexity, okay, I'm not going to take that one. I'm going to take the other one.
Completely right.
Okay. Very good. Thanks. And I couldn't let you go without talking about that because it's very typical also for Wachau.
Of course.
So it's good that we touched that. And once again, thank you very much. And wishing you a nice evening, and thanks everybody for watching.
I hope I see you sometime in person.
Sure, when I'm around, I will be sure to pop by, and maybe not in summer because I know that's a busy time. But
sure. for a quick vineyard tour, we always have time.
Very good. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you, Leo. Next week we're going to go into Spain, same time on Friday evening with Rafael Palacios. So we'll ask him what he thinks is his biggest challenge for the next 10 years. And then this recording can be watched later online as well. And the review for the Gruner Veltliner will also pop up. So thanks, and
Thank you.
have a great evening.
Thank you. You too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.